Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have such a great conversation today. And to me, it's very interesting because we're going to be talking about body language and some other things in there. But oh my gosh, now that we're all just living on Zoom, we're not meeting people in person, our communications are suffering. And so we're going to have a great conversation today with Blanca Cobb. So please welcome Blanca to our program today. Welcome, Blanca.
Thank you, Deb, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you. So Blanca Cobb is an internationally recognized body language expert and TV personality who's had more than 1,000 TV appearances on programs such as The Steve Harvey Show, Today's Show, Megyn Kelly, Today, Dr. Oz, Dr. Drew, CNN, Face the Truth, and The Doctors. She's also been quoted in more than 100 publications worldwide, such as Cosmopolitan, Us Weekly, Elite Daily, Business Insider, Elle, Daily Mail, among others. She shares her expertise weekly on a CBS affiliate in North Carolina. When it comes to corporate America, Blanca's in the relationship business. Her approach to sales is the relationship dynamics between sales professionals and their clients. It's what isn't said, but seen that can either drive or stall the sales process. Blanca also turns professionals into rock stars on camera, whether you're booked for a TV segment or making your own videos, or maybe doing Zooms. She has said not to let the small screen of the virtual world fool you. Nonverbal communication is equally important on video calls and on camera when you're making videos to promote yourself, your products, services, and your company. So again, Blanca, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I always like to know how it is that my guests got to where they are today and how they discovered that this is their passion in life. So give us a little bit more information about yourself.
Okay. So I got to take you back to my childhood to tell you how this all started. Although I'll put a little caveat in right now. I had no idea that I was going to lead into this direction, but I didn't have a happy childhood. So I was a victim of childhood abuse. But one thing that I did when I was little is I paid attention to body language, to changes in the tone of voice, even listening to the steps coming down the hallway. Were they a happy type of step or were they an angry, purposeful? It's paying attention to those nonverbal messages really let me know what was possibly going to happen. And as you might imagine, I had no idea who I could trust, right? And so when I was getting older, I just really just started paying attention to people because I quickly realized that people will reveal who they are if you just watch. Right. You have to really listen to their words. And I wanted to go in the helping profession. I got a master's in psychology and I blended the two together and here I am.
Great. I love it. And it is obviously such a tragedy what you had to endure as a child. But to be able to turn it into something that helps people is such a gift, and so, it's kind of one of those catch-22s. You wish it didn't happen, but, you have turned it into a way that you can help others. It was obviously such a tragedy what you went through, but to be able to turn it into a gift and a gift to be able to help others truly is your passion, as you said.
It is.
So, I talked about it at the start. All of a sudden, boom, we're behind cameras, and we'll talk more about how to actually be on camera, in a little bit later. But we went from being able to truly read somebody's body language in person to seeing them from mid-chest up. And that's just really difficult because we're not seeing the crossed legs. I mean, you see little bits of things. We laughed at, we see people when they eye roll,
Sure.
some various things like that. But there's so much body language that we aren't getting anymore. So let's talk about kind of both things. How do we deal with it when we're not getting that body language? But more importantly, how do we put body language back into it when we're only being seen from mid-chest up?
Great question. And the answer is to focus on what you can see.
Okay.
It'd be great if we were so far away from the camera, you could see person head to toe like you do in person. You can't do that. So you focus on what you can see. And so this means your head, your facial expressions, your forehead, your eyebrows, what you do with your eyes, to your cheeks, your mouth, your chin, everything, your shoulders, whether you lean in sends a message versus if you lean out, you turn subtly, you look away. But then the key is with body language, it's not just noticing that there's a body language gesture, but what happened right before you saw that gesture?
Right.
What caused it? Was it a question? Was it a change in conversation? Did somebody walk by and grab their attention? That's where you have to become more of a detective to figure out the antecedent to the behavior.
Right. So, it is tricky, because we don't see these things. And, and it's funny, because I just leaned in, and I don't think we realize, like, I talk a lot with my hands, that's part of why my microphone hangs up in the air, because that way I don't knock the little bugger over. But, when I do it, I'm either doing it where it's so low people can't see it, or you're just seeing my fingertips. And so we've got the little dancing fingertips that are going here. And so one of the things, and I love how you have your setup for Zoom. And for those who are just listening, it's a little bit further away. So I see more of your upper body. And I really like that, because it does allow you to show more of what's going on with your body language.
That's right. And you can see my hands when I lift them up.
Right. As opposed to the little dancing fingertips.
Right. And so just the little fingers.
Right. Now, so how do we add appropriate gestures back in when we're only doing Zoom calls or making videos for our companies?
Great question. And it's not that you add it in, you have to be who you are. So it's not like you have to say, oh, I got to move my arm this way or my hand that way. It's not that. It's how you normally talk. So the thing about being on Zoom is you still want to be yourself, talk how you typically talk. The one thing that you do have to do is you have to bolster up your energy. You have to have more energy on a camera. So whether you're on a Zoom call or you're in a TV studio, you have to have more energy. And sometimes you will exaggerate a little more with your facial expressions, just because that energy goes up. So you're going to exaggerate a little more. Doesn't mean it's inauthentic emotion. It just means you're just bringing a higher level of energy. And that's a critical component. And one thing that drives people nuts is that they're always looking at the screen. So now I'm looking at my screen where I can see you, which is great. However, when you look at me, I'm not giving you eye contact. So the way you do this on camera is you look directly into the camera. And it's very hard if you have a little green dot, red dot, or the little black hole that you're staring into, because you're like, wait a second. That's awkward, because you don't do that in real life. You're actually looking at someone's eyes. So I get that. But that's how you project warmth, and you project a connection is through that camera lens, even if there aren't any eyes looking back at you.
Right. Yeah, so that's important as to how you set things up. I love the people, even after all this time, where we're doing a Zoom and we're looking up their nose, right? Because they've got the camera. I'm like, okay, folks, put your camera on a book.
Or several books, whatever you have to do.
It used to be phone books, but we don't have those any longer, or encyclopedias, right? Those were the big books. So you might have to stack some things, but we don't like looking up your nose. We also don't like looking down. I had a Zoom the other day with someone who spent the whole time. Now I know that they were looking at their camera, but the way they had it positioned, they were looking off into the distance the whole time. And of course, my first thought was, what's going on over there? I mean, I really did. It's kind of like, you see somebody looking up at a building, you look up, right?
Exactly.
But, as you said, we need to be looking straight at it. And it might take some finagling with how you do things, especially depending on what your computer setup is, but you can do it.
Sure.
And if you're doing this more than, a couple of times a week, make it something that works well.
Exactly. That doesn't mean that you can never look at the person, look at the screen. Normally, when you're talking, you want to look into the camera because that projects eye contact. But let's say you're listening. There might be a time where you look at the screen. So I can see you nod your head, right? I can see that pretty smile that's coming across your lips. And then I can look right back at the camera again. So that way you're doing both, but it's really important when you're talking to look through that camera lens.
Right. The hard part, of course, is, it's pretty easy when there's just the two of us. I did a Zoom, and we've all probably done them where there's, we've got Marsha, we've got the Brady's going on. And I saw that she turned 65 the other day. Oh my gosh. Boy, we talk about, brain fart there for a moment, but we've got all these multiple screens. And if you're on a large call, you've got multiple screens, and and so sometimes you're trying to figure out who the heck do I talk to. So that's where it's exactly what you said. You're talking to the camera.
Yes, you're talking to the camera, but everybody else is watching you. When you talk to everyone, you're talking to no one.
Right.
You really have to talk to that one person and realize that everybody on the other end of that screen, whether it's 2 people or 2,000 people, they're watching you. So you can't look at every person in their box because then you're taking your eyes away from that camera. But all those people in those boxes are looking at you. And when you look at the camera, they feel like you're talking directly to them.
Right. And that's counterintuitive to those of us who were taught how to be public speakers, because we were told, glance at other people in the room. Or, depending on what's going on, you might find one person and talk to them, all of these various things. But if you're trying to look at every person on the screen, it really does look very uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then you become a bobblehead because your head's going, dun, 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 right?
Right. Yeah. And then up
around.
And down.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I told somebody the other day, I said, I feel like a bobblehead when I'm on there.
But now, having said that, let's say you want to talk to one person. Well, then you'll say, I'm just going to say Greg. Greg, and then you ask Greg a question, right? So then you can individualize it that way. So that way you still have a sea of people, but then you're still, if you need to talk to one person in that group because you're answering a question, for example, or directing something to their attention, then you call that person's name. And then that's where you help individualize it.
Right. And it is tricky with Zoom, and I haven't used the other platforms, but I know that there's, others, but it is still the same thing. I mean, we've got the multiple talking heads that we're all trying to figure out who to talk to. And it does, it's a habit or not a habit. I mean, it's just kind of, if you've got, say, 6 people on the screen, somebody speaks, you immediately look at their image, because and so that's where it gets a little bit weird, is to remember, okay, it's okay to look at them as they speak, but then look back at the camera.
Sure, absolutely. And one thing that people should keep in mind is you want vocal variety. That's another way to have energy on camera. You don't want to talk in monotone. That is so boring. No, you use your voice. I mean, there's sometimes that you're talking about something that you're really passionate about. So what's going to happen? That voice is going to interject. It's going to come up. Other times you'll lower your tone naturally because maybe it's important, or you really want to get somebody's attention, or you might enunciate your words. There's just so many different ways of how you can use paralanguage. Right. Changing that voice tone or the speed in which you talk. That is so important. And then also hands. And that's another big reason I feel like people should need to be further away from the camera, because for me, hands are an emotional barometer. You can accentuate what you say. You can anchor different points with your hands. So that way you talk about subject A, you're using your right hand. Subject B, you're using your left hand. It just, there's so much that you can do non-verbally that helps people remember what you say and makes you more of an engaging speaker on a virtual platform.
Right. And it's hard for me to talk without using my hands. So even if you can't see them, I'm down here waving, and so it really is, I think we're getting better at it. Some of us, I mean, for some, it doesn't come naturally, not everybody likes doing this. And then of course, what happens is you get that, they turn the camera off type of thing. Right.
Sure.
But, and that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. But, reading people's body language really is so incredibly important. I mentioned in your bio that you help salespeople with knowing, okay, has this person just given you a reaction where, okay, they didn't understand, they don't like you anymore, all those various things. Or more importantly, oh my gosh, we want to spend lots of money with you, right? So, let's people are going back to in-person meetings again. So I really want to talk about this because I think it is important, not only just in general, but kind of during COVID too, because we're still being told social distance, all of these various things. So how has, at least temporarily, people's body language changed?
When they're social distancing?
Right. So when we're actually meeting in person but we can't go up and hug them. We can't do all of those various things.
Well, there's a lot of things that you can do at a distance. One thing is you can lean in.
Okay.
So when you lean in, guess what? It gives the appearance that you're getting physically closer, even though your feet have not moved. That's a sign of interest. That's like, hey, I'm really into what you're saying. Keep going, right? Smiles. In the business setting, for whatever reason, people don't smile as much as they should. Smiling is friendly. Business doesn't always have to be serious. You can still smile. I mean, people are going to want to talk to you if you're friendly. If they have a choice, you see two people in a room and you have someone that's smiling and they have this open body language and they're more encouraging versus someone who gives you this look.
Right. They're like, oh, I don't want to go talk to them.
Right. You don't want to talk to them. So it's the same thing. So you want to smile, and then you can use hand gestures. And then you do something cute when you see somebody and you're not comfortable giving a handshake. This is what I tell people. This is a trick, is that don't wait and see what the other person does. If you know you don't want to give a handshake, take control of it. Go ahead and do this imaginary high five or put an elbow out, whatever it is that you want to do. Put your hands up. So that way you're setting the lead, if you will. And then more than likely someone will follow. They're like, oh, okay, she's putting her hands up instead of extending her hand. I got it. No handshake. And they'll just follow suit. So just make it easier.
Right. And it is interesting that, we can't greet each other like we used to. Some people do, and that's great. But, like I'm one of those people that, for health issues, I still need to kind of keep my distance, all those various things. And I have, I'll just kind of put my palm up, the universal stop, when I see that they're coming in, or the elbow. I love that. Now I've actually elbowed people in the chest on accident because they've leaned in because they were going to hug, and it's like, okay, well that doesn't work. But
boundary.
Right. Yeah. But then we giggle and, we have a good time, but it's, it is, it is still just so incredibly important to be reading that body language, because what we're saying frequently is very different than what we're showing.
Absolutely. People try to hide how they feel for whatever reason. They may not want to show that they're happy, or they may not want to show that they're angry or unsure. So you're going to try to cloud it, hide it, disguise it. But this is the beauty about body language. Your body will reveal what you're trying to hide.
Right.
And what happens is there's micro expressions. So there's certain involuntary facial expressions that you make and they leak. You might try to pretend to be happy, but your face could leak sadness. And what happens is people aren't going, wait, I saw happiness and then I saw sadness. What they're saying is like, I'm getting the sense that he's not really happy right now. You have this sixth sense that's picking up on the vibes. And that's what happens a lot of the times.
Right. And when we're reading things well, it really does go well, because, we can tell, okay, I lost them there. Or, clearly they're confused, or, oh my gosh, they did get very excited. But it's, I guess what I'm trying to, I get so caught up in this. What are things that we should be doing ourselves? Because we're all told, look at someone, focus obviously, again, when we're meeting in person, you can't just stare at them, because that gets real uncomfortable after a while.
Sure.
But
it's creepy.
what are some things that we've been kind of going through some of those. What are things that we personally need to watch for when we're doing, because like I said, I talk with my hands a lot. So someone might think that I'm very, he does give, people get some mixed messages from that. Am I just flighty? Am I not focusing? All these various things. So what are some kind of danger things that we need to be watching for to maintain in ourselves?
The biggest danger thing is when your words and your body language doesn't match up.
Okay.
Because when there's a discrepancy in what you say versus what you're showing in your body language, people are going to believe you're nonverbal. Let me give you a great example. It happens to all of us. It has happened. It will continue to happen until the end of time. You walk by somebody like, hey, how's it going? They're like, fine. Flat affect. They say the right thing. They say fine. Or maybe they're like, good. They don't even look at you. They have the sour look on their face. And you're like, no, you don't buy it. But a lot of times we don't have skin in the game. We don't care. We keep moving on. But that's a good example. You have to have that congruency in what you're saying versus what you're showing. Then that gives people credibility, because people are like, oh, okay, this person means what she or he says. And that's really important. It's that authenticity that people talk about so much, right? People want that transparency.
Right.
And then also pay attention to how people respond to you. So many times we look at somebody else. Do they like us? Do they not like us? Are they interested? Oh, looks like I lost them. Oh, was that a real objection? Or maybe that wasn't a real objection. Maybe that was a lie. You focus so much on the other person, you forget that you're part of the equation. There's an ebb and flow of conversation. So whatever vibes you're putting out, guess what? They're receiving them and they're throwing them right back at you. So pay attention to how people respond to you. That's a big clue.
Right. And we obviously use body language all the time. I mean, from infancy, we're looking at things and picking those things up. I interviewed somebody several weeks ago, and we were talking about job interviews, and we were talking about the fact that, when you're the interviewee, and there's the interviewer. I mean, clearly it's even if you're a shoe in for the position, it's still kind of stressful. And so dealing with the interviewers' body language, they might be asking the right questions, but if they've sat back, if they're looking off, one of the worst ones, they look at their watch. That's always entertaining, right? And so when you start seeing something going wrong, when you care, so maybe it is a job interview, maybe it's, great business meeting, things like that. How do you kind of, offset that, oh my gosh, I think I've lost them type of communication to reel them back in?
Good question. The first thing you can do is start mimicking body language.
Okay.
So this helps establish rapport. It's called mirroring. So what happens, and it happens naturally to a lot of us. If you think about, a really good friend, a sibling, a parent, you spend so much time with somebody, you're really gelling, you're connecting, that you pick up some of their mannerisms or their catchphrases. So that's what I'm talking about. So when you meet somebody and you're developing rapport, if let's say they adjust their watch, you might wait a few seconds and then you straighten your sleeve. So and the reason this works so well is because like likes like. We like people who are very similar to us. And having those body gestures that are similar, it registers subconsciously in our brain, wow, okay, there's a commonality there. There's some similarity. And that really helps. But the key with mirroring someone's body language is it can't be the exact same gesture, and it can't be immediately after, because that comes across as creepy.
Right. Yeah, I remember I'm a big fan of the Big Bang Theory, the TV show. And when fairly early on, when the guys were dating, that was one of the things that they were doing, was they were mimicking the young ladies' gestures. And of course they were mimicking them identically. And it was a hoot, because, it was so fake. But it was kind of interesting, because when they backed off and just did it in a much more natural way, then it worked much better than, they cross their legs, I cross my legs. They look at, they put their hand on their chin, I put my hand on my chin. I mean, then it just looked funny.
Right.
But when it really was more subtle, you could see that, I mean, clearly it was a TV show, but they were responding to those.
It absolutely works. And let's say you're in a conversation and that person seems to be staring off into space. What you can do is you can change the tone of your voice. I'm not talking about getting aggressive.
Right. Hey.
Right. No, that's what not to do. I'm talking about what to do. And one thing that you can do is that you can change your voice, because when there's a change, you're like, wait, what just happened? And it brings them back to you. Or you can ask a question, or you can ask their opinion. You can say their name. But when you say their name, it has to be in a friendly way, an engaging way, not in a reprimanding way, because that's going to blow up in your face. That's just not going to work. If you're in an in-person interview, let's say if there's something on the table you can draw their attention to. Let's say you have a report, or you have a project, you have something that you want to show them. You can get them back engaged by showing them whatever it is that you have, as long as it's relevant to the conversation. And that really helps, because normally people just need a distraction because they're thinking about something else. And then it's like, oh yeah, you do it in such a subtle way where you're not calling anyone out, everyone's saving face, and it's more natural.
Right. Yeah, you say that, and it was funny because I immediately thought of a time when I called somebody out. And it was, it was years ago. I was at a networking thing, and we were doing the go around the table and introduce yourself just to the person next to you thing. So you weren't introducing to the table, you were just talking to the person next to you. Now, mind you, I was doing public relations, and the person that I was talking to was a reporter. So doing what I did was probably really bad, but he introduced himself, and I, works for, such and such newspaper. This was his beat, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, what do you do? And so I started in on my, I at that point I worked for a nonprofit, and he was the health reporter. I mean, this really was somebody that I needed to get his attention. The second I opened my mouth, he picks up his BlackBerry, right? So that really does date this. And he starts checking his email. I mean, I've lost him. He is not making eye contact. He's not doing anything, but I was getting that. So he was at least paying. I mean, he knew I was talking, but I could tell he was not paying attention in the slightest. And so I called him out on it. And I can't believe I did this. I really can't believe I did this. And I said, but I still did it in a what was hopefully not a confrontational way. I said, I'm terribly sorry. It looks like you've got something there that you need to deal with. Do you want to deal with it? Instead of, hey, dude, pay attention to me. But he immediately put his BlackBerry down and apologized. And he said, I'm very sorry. I should have been paying attention to you. Now, he could have just as easily gone, okay, and just blew me off.
Sure.
But it was a way that I brought him back to what was going on, but not in that real confrontational way. It was just, it looks like you've got something else going on. Maybe you need to take care of that.
Right. I think how you handled it was fine.
It was a little confrontational. I was pissed.
Well, how you feel versus what you say are two different things.
Right.
And I think your word choices were more appropriate. You didn't let that, at least from what you're describing, you didn't let that anger or frustration or that pissed offness come across.
Right. Well, and hopefully he didn't catch it from my body language, because like I said, I was not happy. And so hopefully I didn't have the furrowed brow and, and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it really was just kind of one of those things. But yeah, I was surprised that he just put his, and the next time I pitched a story to him, he did it. So no idea if he remembered me or anything, but sometimes I think we do have to do that when we notice somebody's body language has just, or his wasn't even his body language. I mean, he just was very clearly sidetracked. It is okay to kind of call him back to it. I mean, I've seen people do that. And now that's confrontational.
Yeah, that's like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, pay attention to me. Oh, no.
Let me give you another subtle technique to use. Get people moving. If you're sitting down, stand up, go into another room, even if you shift your weight just a little bit.
Okay.
Because what happens is people are so focused on something else in the moment. At the time, I don't think people are intentionally being rude. I do think that some people just get caught up in a distracted thought, that if you just shift that energy, you shift some movement just a little bit, then they're not focused on whatever they're focused on.
Right.
Because you move the body just a little bit. I think that helps.
Yeah. I mean, an example of that might be if you're in an interview with someone and you notice that they're not paying attention, just changing how you're seated in your chair kind of brings their focus back.
Exactly.
I love it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, some of the issues that I have heard, especially because we're doing, all these Zooms, that, it's hard to tell. We're obviously having a lot of people have mental health issues because of Zoom. We're not in person. We are social creatures. I love not having to put my shoes on and drive to meetings. I mean, this is great, but at the same point, it is very challenging. So, one of the things that I've talked with people about is how they need to look at those subtle things that are going on to maybe see that there might be an issue. Is that something that you have noticed, and you talk with people about?
Give an example of what you mean.
So somebody might actually be really struggling with being, still caught up in their office. Now, we are getting out and about, but, so they're just, they're depressed. And so they might be saying the right things. They might be, doing all that, but their body language, and more importantly, maybe, they're not as dressed as well. There's, they're the unmade bed behind them, they don't care about anymore, all those things. Can you pick up on those to really help? And, I mean, you can't say, hey, Blanca, everything okay with you? I mean, maybe you could, but, are those subtle gestures that are there that you can pick up on, there's something not quite right here?
The best way to do that is you have to establish somebody's baseline first.
Okay.
You have to figure out how
they might like the dirty bed behind them, right?
That's exactly right. They might be so laid back and chill. They're like, yeah, whatever. When you establish somebody's baseline and you understand how they typically present themselves, how they talk, how they communicate, what type of gestures or no gestures that they make, then when there's a change in that baseline behavior, that's your aha moment.
Right.
That's where you have to be careful. You cannot be a mind reader. You cannot automatically assume why, because then you can make a big mistake and can ruin an otherwise healthy relationship. However, you can ask questions.
Right.
I get the impression, it seems like those types of things where you're asking a question, you're subtly calling it to their attention, you give them an opportunity to talk. The best way to do it, again, is establishing someone's baseline behavior.
Okay. And of course, that's hard if you're not talking with them all the time, but this is more for people who were used to being in an office every day and seeing these people. And when we initially started with Zoom, everybody was happy. This is fun. This is great. And then things for some people really did deteriorate.
It did.
So, one of the things I was looking on your website, and you've got a great website, and it's blancacobb.com. Easy peasy. Yes. I love that. And lots of great information there. Okay. I have to say, the mother-daughter shenanigans, everybody just go there, look at the mother-daughter shenanigans. Those were so fun.
Thank you.
I watched them all. I did. I went, because it was like, okay, what's going to happen? So, kudos to you for having such a fun time with your daughter. I thought those were fabulous. And I love that you put them on your website. I mean, so many people would go, that's very personal. To me, I went, oh my gosh, this is somebody I want to work with. And because it did seem so fun. But you do have a lot of media. You've got a lot of blog posts, things like that, where you're talking about body language. And, we mentioned in your bio that people ask you to look at things and say, tell us what's going on. And I did see in your bio that originally you got called in to do this on a court case. How was this person's body language doing? And of course, what I noticed when I was reading your blog, I am one of those people that I'm a royal watcher, not the baseball team, the crown. And the whole Harry and William thing has been such an odd dynamic, but I think it carries over into other things. How close are they standing? How are they looking at each other? So tell us a little bit more about that, because that just fascinates me that you get called to look at things like that are unscripted. I mean, we're clearly not talking about TV shows, but things like, you're watching an interview or things like that. It really did just fascinate me.
I have been analyzing the royal family's body language for years now, for all kinds of worldwide publications. But to answer your question, when the hard part about the royal family is because they're in the limelight. So there's a certain protocol that they have that a lot of
they're
us don't know
told you
about.
have to be reserved.
Yes. And there's a certain way that they need to present themselves. But even with all of that, the protocol, they're still human. And when we are on the outs with somebody, we tend to want to keep our distance. You move things towards things you like, things that you're attracted to, things that bring you peace and happiness. So yes, even noticing, when they're talking to a person, is there any engagement between the two of them, or is it all directed to the other person? You watch, is their body positioned away from each other? What's happening with their feet? Feet take you in the direction that you want to go. So if your feet are pointed away from somebody, well, that's a hint. There's the only problem with analyzing still photography, and I said this earlier, this is talking about antecedents to behavior. You don't know what happened before that.
Right. Yeah. The still photograph. Yeah.
It's very hard. And a lot of people want commentaries. I have to be very careful in what I say, but still there's some trends that you can see. So it's good to have a baseline behavior and look at more photos or different interviews or different videos to get a sense of how someone presents themselves.
Yeah, the still photography thing, it always, when I'm reading, it doesn't matter, who what the situation is, but when they say clearly they're not happy with each other, well, like you said, you have no idea what happened. And I'll be honest, you can look through anything. I get a kick out of this with all of the politicians, both sides. There are, media outlets that like people and media outlets that don't like people. And they're going to go through and they're going to find the worst or the best, photo of them that they can find. And so, I think we saw that a lot with really what was going on, and especially when you've taken video. I mean, it's so easy to pull one frame out and make it that, the headline.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that does happen a lot. And you just have to be careful in what you analyze when it is when it's a still photo.
Yeah. When you're looking at the news reports on Facebook, folks, remember, it's pretty easy for them to have just pulled out that one still photograph or taken the one still photograph, to get the image that they want.
And the reverse of what you're saying, there are many times when I'm asked to comment on the body language of celebrity couples, people know how to fake a smile and people know how to act like they're into each other, right? It's better when people submit to me for my analysis candid shots, when people have no idea the camera is on them. That's more telling.
Right. But, there are times where I look at, say, the celebrity shots of, and especially when it's a couple, are they happy? Are they not happy? You still can pick up on, oh my gosh, that is the fakest smile,
Of course you can. Of course you can.
And some things like that. But yeah, to me, that just is a fascinating aspect of what you do.
Yeah. I just commented on The Bachelorette with her final 3 men, and it was a still photo. But even when I look at still photos of her and each of the individual men. But even when I look at video, you have to think this is edited out. You're not going to see the whole 40-minute argument. You're only going to see the 2-minute clip that they're showing on air. So you have to be careful, but you can still get a sense. So body language really gives you a sense of what's going on for people. One of my quotes is, body language is emotional. It shows how you're feeling in the moment. I mean, if you're relaxed, you're relaxed. It's very hard to give me a true expression that you're pissed off right now if you don't feel it, right? You have to, that feeling. So you have the thought and the feeling, and then you have the body language.
Right.
I can also go in reverse.
Right. Yeah. And I've, we're in the middle of the Olympics as we're recording this, and excuse me, watching their body language. is so telling. Because and I love the commentators when, oh, she looks very nervous, and I'm thinking, no, she doesn't. Or the opposite, you all be thinking, oh my God, she looks absolutely terrified. And and all of those various things, like Simone Biles obviously was somebody that we've analyzed and analyzed and analyzed. And it was very interesting to hear how people were saying, based just on what she was doing. There were people that, I heard people that said, well, there's really nothing wrong with her. Look how happy she is. Well, again, that was just a snippet of what was going on in her life.
Right.
And
exactly.
I actually have a family member, a distant family member, who competed and ended up with fourth. Oh, broke your heart. She was fourth, but I mean, still the accomplishment of just getting
exactly
there, it was incredible. And to see the heartbreak on her face, I mean, it really did just break your heart. But then today she was posting, okay, I'm over it. And you could see from that picture, she was, again, just a picture. We know it's just the snippet. But I think that's, it really is very showing as to, she knew people needed to see a positive picture. And so that was what she put out there.
Exactly. So is this distant family member, they currently competing in the current Olympics?
Yes. So she is Greek. And she is a pole vaulter. In 2016, she won the gold. And this year, so that was very cool. And this year she unfortunately got fourth. But again, I mean, what an accomplishment. And that's, I mean, that's, we'll go off the rails here for a second. The people who say, oh, you got bronze, you got silver. I'm sorry, you're still the second best, the third best in the world.
Exactly. Holy smoke. It's so easy for people to criticize, isn't it?
Right. Oh yeah. From our couch, right? Now, you also work with people really on how to be casual and authentic and we've been alluding to it, but on video, not Zoom video. So let's talk about, if you're recording video for your product, for your company, what are some techniques that people need to know for that?
One that I said earlier is, when you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. When you're talking into the camera, let's say you have a service and you have an idea of who it's going to help, you need to just envision that person when you're looking at the camera and have a conversation. It really helps, because no matter how many eyes are watching it, you're still helping so many other people, but your job is to communicate to one person who is watching you at that moment. And then figure out what you're going to say.
Okay. Too
many people get on camera and they ramble and they ramble. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's like ping pong. They go this way and that way. And you're like, okay, what's the point? You have to realize that you are competing with so many other people who are doing video marketing right now. So make sure that you have a very good message. It's going somewhere. And then when you're talking, you want to make sure that you're having a conversation.
Okay.
Because when you're having a conversation like you and I are, you're much more relaxed. It's not stiff. You're not thinking about the next word you're going to say. And it's really important just to be relaxed. You want to have a conversation with the camera. What happens a lot of times, people get stiff. They're not sure, they get nervous, or what do I do with my hands? It's okay to mess up on camera. What I mean is, let's say you're talking about 3 things, but you skip the order. Okay. If it isn't something that has to be sequential or chronological, who cares? Your audience has no idea. So if you don't make a big deal, then they're not going to perceive it as a big deal. That's exactly right. And so people don't realize that. So there's some things that you can do just to be more relaxed, more professional, and you really want to jive with the camera. That is what really works. And let me relate this to TV and movies. We don't watch bad actors.
Right.
Nobody wants to
unless we
watch
want to
a
laugh.
bad actor. Yeah. Yes. However, most people don't go, I can't wait, 8 o'clock, this show's coming on with the worst actor ever. No, it doesn't happen. So I bring that to your attention for a reason. And that is, you have to be comfortable. You have to be relaxed on camera. That's why it's so important.
Right. And I think that's where we have the impression of, say, the used car salesman. They're on the screen and they're going to tell you, hey, this is the greatest thing in the world and you need to buy this. They're not having a conversation. They're basically yelling at you.
Exactly. That's not what you want to do at all.
No.
Another mistake that people will make is that they think the video is about them. It's about me, what I've done, what I've accomplished, why you should choose me, my experience. Okay, knock it off. No one cares.
Right.
What can you do for them? How are you helping them? How can you revolutionize, change their life where they're safer, happier, wealthier, more relaxed? What is it? Video is not about you. Video is about the person and the people you're trying to help. And when
again,
you
I
have
love
these things in mind, it really, you come across in a way that people are like, man, they really get me. They really understand me.
Right. I remember, when I was itsy bitsy, as in a baby, what my mother used to do in the afternoons was she would put me in my little bassinetti thing in front of the TV with a soap opera on. And I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world because they did lots of close-ups of whoever and in my little 6-month-old brain, I thought, oh, these people are talking to me.
Yes.
But that was really it. I mean, they were talking to me. And, and so it was soothing. I thought I was in their bedroom there. Well, probably not as a 6-month-old. But I think that's one of the things, like with say the TV show Friends, we felt like we were in the apartment with them.
Exactly.
All of these various things. And so that's where, as you said, when you're filming, and you might be selling a widget. A widget is not the sexiest thing in the world, but how is that widget going to help somebody?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you bring that up, because the other thing is, it isn't about just being educational. You have to be entertaining.
Right.
You have to be entertaining. So how you get somebody's attention, keep their attention while you're trying to give them information that can really change their life.
Right. And especially if what you're talking about might not be the greatest subject in the world, right? A widget.
Right. Well, it's also props. People can use props when you're on camera. People are visual. We're visual creatures. A lot of us are.
Right. I mean, there's a reason why, the late night commercials feature the guy that's got all sorts of energy and he's showing you this and he's showing you that. And pretty soon you're like, oh my God, I don't even know what it is, but I'm going to buy it.
Right. It's got to be great. And energy is contagious.
Right. How can I tell him no? Well, oh my gosh, Blanca, we are almost at the top of the hour. And so I really want to have an opportunity for you to tell people how they can connect with you and then the services that you provide.
Oh, yes. Well, you can connect with me on my website, blancacobb.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn at Blanca Cobb. Oh, and also I have a YouTube channel. And then one area that I really help entrepreneurs and small business owners is so many are scared to be seen, but you have to be seen to be known. And one way of doing that is getting on camera. So I help people with their message, so they're not rambling. How can they come across magnetic? What I even help with the calls to action at the end. How are you going to have great body language? How can you get somebody's attention in those first 3 to 5 seconds where they're going to want to stay and watch your video instead of moving on?
Right.
Everything from the psychology of colors, what you wear and how you position yourself, looking at your body language. I mean, it's everything. So that way you can be dynamic. Because the whole point that people get on video when they're promoting themselves, their product, their service, their brand is because they want to turn viewers into buyers. And that's what I help people do.
Right. I love that because, we either think, hey, we're hot stuff, or we're absolutely terrified. I mean,
Exactly.
but people they need to see us. I mean, that is part of how we build that trust. I was giving a podcast the other day talking about why you should get on podcasts, right?
Right.
And we talked about the fact that you can get a brochure, you can look at a website, you can even read somebody's social media posts, all those things. But when you hear them, it helps build that trust. And of course, when you hear and see them, it's even more so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Well, again, it's BlancaCobb.com. And I love this, you've got the one program, How Not to Suck on TV. And that's true. I mean, and we see that, clearly not with professionals and things like that, but it is also, okay, when you've got, the 30-second video on your website, when you're doing a Facebook Live, a LinkedIn Live, all of those various things, it is how to be that person. And it comes back to exactly what you're saying. Have a conversation with one person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
And then you help many.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And you do have such great information. I love your blog posts. Right. I saw, like I said, everybody has to go look at the mother-daughter shenanigans.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell you where it is on the website. So that way they have to look for all of it. But yeah, I mean, just tons of great information. I've been having this fabulous conversation with you. Is there any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Oh, great question. I guess piggybacking on what we were just talking about is you have to be known. And it's challenging even when you're scared, but there's a way to do it. It is so much easier than you think it is. Just give me a call. I'll show you how.
Perfect. I love it. And again, it's BlancaCobb.com and all the information is there. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely fascinating discussion with Blanca Cobb. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.